What's going on, gardeners? It's Sunday, May 1st, and it is a gorgeous spring day here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. Today, I will be undertaking a very needed and dramatic rehabilitation of my container gardening area right behind me. And to do that, I will be erecting a very unique trellis system to support all of my plants that will also carry future drip irrigation, be highly space efficient, and look good in the process. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated. I'll be trying to accomplish 4 different things with this trellis support system. Number 1, it has to protect my plants from blowing over because I live in one of the windiest places in the entire country here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. Number 2, it has to be able to support a future drip irrigation system that I'm going to run in between all of my plants. Number 3, it has to be highly space efficient because I'm working with a very limited space for all of my plants here. And number 4, it has to look pretty good as well. In past years, the way that I've always supported my plants is by taking these 4-foot pieces of 3/8 inch rebar and pounding them into the ground through my weed barrier and then tying my plants to it. And I want to get away from this method because, well, number 1, it's really starting to put a lot of holes in my weed barrier and I want to preserve it better. But number 2 and 3, I'm always concerned about these as a safety issue because I don't want my dog Dale to run into them because they're just kind of like an obstacle course for him to run in between. And I'm always afraid that I'm going to trip and fall and somehow impale myself through them. It's happened before, so it's a little bit, not to me, but it's happened before to other people. I want to get away from this system and make a more space efficient, safer system that is also very inexpensive to build and looks really good. And I'm going to show you all the materials I'm going to use to accomplish that. In order to build this trellis, I'm going to use a number of very inexpensive things, but will give me a lot of strength. And I'm going to start off by using these 7-foot T-posts. You can pick these up at any local Tractor Supply or similar store. I got these from Tractor Supply years ago. Then I'm going to use this 1/8 inch stainless steel aircraft cable. It's very strong and will basically last forever. It's also very cheap. And then I will also be using this attachment hardware and turnbuckles for the 1/8 inch aircraft cable, as well as hardened wire cutters and bolt cutters in order to press the attachment hardware on. Like I said, these 7-foot T-posts come from Tractor Supply. Everything else is linked in my Amazon storefront down in the video description underneath the categories trellising supplies and garden accessories. Now I'm going to start off by hammering these 7-foot T-posts into the ground, and I'm going to try to embed them about 12 inches, maybe a little bit more, until the solid ends on the bottom are completely embedded into the ground. All of my T-posts have been pounded into the ground, and I started building the first half of my trellis. And I wanted to assemble this and show you what I did and explain exactly why I did what I did before I show you exactly how to do this. The first thing you'll notice is I have 2 separate cables, and these are going to be the cables that I'm going to tie my trees to, and they're going to act as the supports. The first cable I chose to make 22 inches off the ground, and that's because I'm going to tie my distribution main line for my drip irrigation to the bottom cable. So the bottom cable is both going to hold the distribution line and be the first point of tying my trees down low. The reason why I went with 22 inches off the ground is because I needed this line right here to be taller than my tallest pot by a few inches, but I also didn't want to make it so tall that I would need a lot of water pressure to get the water this high off the ground for the drip irrigation. So you want it to be just tall enough, but not too tall. So that's why I did what I did. The second string is at 36 inches because that's going to be near the tops of most of my trees, and I want to be able to support them down low and also in the middle top of the individual trees. Now, when I placed my T-posts, I made sure to stick it so these spikes that are on the edges of the T-post face outward, and that's because I want them to be able to grab the end of this metal cable so it can't slip up and down more than an inch. They'll be able to stop it, stop any kind of vertical play in the cable. So that's why I made sure to orient the T-posts with these individual little shelves on them, or whatever you call them, sticking outward. So what I started with was, I started with a little small section of aircraft cable that I looped around and tightened just so I would have something to grab onto with a turnbuckle. So I put a little hoop inside of the stainless steel aircraft cable in order for me to place this turnbuckle in. Then I cut to length the second wire that I ran all the way down to the other T-post, and I made sure it was hand tightened with the turnbuckle fully extended, because shrinking the turnbuckle, torquing it, and making the turnbuckle smaller is the only way I would be able to pull the slack out of the cable. So when you pull the slack out of the cable, you need to know that sometimes less is more, because these are only T-posts pounded into dirt. If you over tighten this, you'll actually wind up pulling the T-posts in and pulling them over. So you kind of have to make sure that you get everything as tight as you can without over tensioning the T-post. Now that I showed you why I built what I built, I want to show you exactly how to do it. Now I'm going to show you how to build the end piece for the trellis support system. I'm going to start off with a piece of aircraft cable that I cut very short, and then I'm going to take one of these crimps and I'm going to slide it over the piece of cable, and I'm going to build a little loop into the cable. And this loop is going to be what I'm going to slip over the T-post. Now it's pulled through like that. Now I'm going to slip the loop over the T-post, and I want it to settle just about at 22 inches. So I want it to fall right in between these two slats right here. And then I'm going to pull this hand tight as I possibly can by hand. And we want this to be tight enough that if this were to move up and down, that one of these little bumps right here will grab the end of the cable and not let it shift up and down anymore. So in order to accomplish this, I'm actually going to take a pair of channel locks and I'm going to press just to pull a little bit of the tension out. And now that it's as tight as I can get it, I'm going to press the crimp on with this pair of bolt cutters. And I'm going to press it in multiple places. And after the crimp has been pressed on multiple times, we're also going to make a little X pattern in it. Now we're going to take another one of the crimps and we're going to place it over the cable. And then we are going to slide the other end of the cable in. And we are going to make a loop. Then we're going to insert one of these little clips right here, and what this does is it increases the strength of your loop. And I'm going to hand pull this loop of cable pretty hand tight, slip this in, and keep pulling it until this gets locked into place, just like that. And now that that is locked into place, this is what the turnbuckle is going to attach on right here. So that is very important. So now that that is in place, we are once again going to take our bolt cutters and we're going to press the crimp on, and then we are going to remove some of the excess cable that's hanging off the side. Now we're going to pull a fresh length of cable off of the reel, and I'm going to then tie it around the bottom, or the end of this fully extended turnbuckle. And to do that, once again, we're going to place a crimp over the cable. We are going to insert it inside the round end of the turnbuckle, loop it around, and we are going to push the cable through the crimp. And once it's looped through, we are going to press the crimp on like we've been doing the entire time. Then we're going to hook the turnbuckle onto this end that we just made. And now that the other end of the trellis cable is secured with that turnbuckle, I'm going to pull it so it's hand tight, but I'm going to pull it probably about a foot or so beyond the trellis because I need a little bit of slack to get this work done. So I'm going to cut it a little long, and then just like I've been doing, I'm going to feed it through one of these crimps. And I'm going to tie it into a loop, And then once the loop is made, I'm going to slip it over the trellis. And then once again, I'm going to have to mount it at the same 22 inches as I did on the other side of the trellis. So we will have to measure that first. Now that the height has been verified, you need to pull this as hand tight as possible and try to get all of the slack out of this cable, because remember, those few inches of play in your turnbuckle is all you're going to have in terms of applying tension. So right now, I'm really happy with how this slack looks. It's very hand tight and I can barely budge it from here. So now I'm going to try to press this on, and now we're going to start spinning this turnbuckle in order to apply tension to the cable. This is going to pull all of that excess slack out. And remember, we don't want to over tighten it, because if we tighten it too much, we're just going to wind up pulling over our T-posts, which are just secured into the ground, just in dirt. So this isn't made to be highly structural. This is only going to prevent your plants from blowing over in reasonable wind. So now I'm overall very happy with the amount of tension that is in this cable. It'll be nice and strong and support my plants. Now that all of our cables have been run, we're going to go to everywhere where we pressed on one of these crimp style clamps, one of these compression crimps, and we are also going to apply one of these adjustable type clamps that come in the package of hardware that I've linked in my Amazon storefront. And this is going to add a layer of protection just in case, because there is quite a bit of tension in this line. If God forbid one of these crimp clamps were to break and then the cable were to snap back at you, we want to apply one of these adjustable clamps right behind it, so it will grab the cable and it won't come at you full force. Now, the chances of this happening, it's very slight, but as an engineer, it never hurts to have an additional safety factor, because these things cost virtually nothing. So spending basically no money at all just to have that little bit of additional safety to cover you in case of the unlikely event that something were to break and snap back at you is highly advisable. So now our first cable has been run. We are going to do the exact same thing to the second cable at the 36-inch height. Now the top and the bottom trellis cable has been run on each trellis that I built. However, each trellis is 36 feet long from T-post to T-post, so there was a little bit too much slack and not enough support in the cables, I felt. So what I did was I took one of my 4-foot rebars and I drove the 4-foot rebar stake into the ground, and then I tied the trellis to it. So that way there is much more rigidity in the trellis. And if you see what I did, I placed one cable on the back side and the other cable on the front side. That way, you don't want to place each cable on both sides. You want kind of the torque when it bounces back and forth and sways to kind of balance each other out a little bit. And I'll be attempting to do that when I place all of my plants. I'm not going to place all of my plants on one side of the trellis. I'm going to alternate, put a plant on this side, a plant on this side, a plant on this side, a plant on that side. That way, as they sway through the breeze, they try and counterbalance each other a little bit, which should alleviate some of the pressure. Now I'm going to place all of my plants. I got the trellis all set up on one side, and I have all of my container figs right here, and I just want to take you through a quick walkthrough so you can see what everything looks like. And then pretty shortly, we are going to take this other trellis right here, and we are going to use it for all of my new fig seedlings, as well as my potted citrus and my coffee plants and any other things that I have growing on that I still have out in garden carts. And here are the final results of my trellis system. I was able to get all of my fig trees in containers lined up, and I'm kind of running out of daylight, so I'm not able to line up all of my other potted trees, but I will get to that as the week progresses and I get more time. One thing I did not do yet was I did not tie up any of my fig trees, so they are not being supported by the trellis
just yet. And I did that on purpose because I need to run drip irrigation on the lowest support of the trellis. So make sure you stay tuned to the channel, because very shortly I'm going to make a complete guide on how to install drip irrigation to a container garden. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you're notified when we release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I use in this video or that I use in my garden in general, they are all linked down below in my Amazon storefront in the video description. And while you're there, check out my Spreadshop link for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video.
Holy smokes, Dale. I don't think I've ever heard you eat this aggressively. You are going crazy for the food that Grandma gave you. You love that ground up organ mix. Oh man, he is really going to town. He is loving this. Thanks so much, Grandma, for the very, very good meats.